All right, good evening, everyone. It's late. I'll try to keep this quick. I'm Rahul Dani. I lead the growth product engineering team. And so Matt asked me 2 weeks ago that, 3 weeks ago that, give me the title of your presentation. And we are all about movies. So I thought about all the movies that I liked. Thought about Escape from LA, Escape from New York, The Great Escape. And I came up with this name. But then, as I was actually making the presentation, I thought there's another movie which is very relevant, and that is The Shawshank Redemption. So, if you've seen this movie, you'll kind of correlate it to what I'm about to talk about. But if you haven't, I have to apologize in advance. I'm going to give away major spoilers. So I'll try to be careful, but I don't think I can avoid it. So I call it the PCI redemption. Before going too deeply into the plot, let's talk about what we do. So my team basically owns a set of middle tier services. Our main business objective is to drive sign up, to get people to sign up for the service. So all the different client teams, all the different UIs basically talk to our tier to serve the sign up flow. So think about browsers, think about mobile apps, tablet apps, TV devices, Chromecast, everything. All of them talk to our middle tier. And the way it works is they'll say, hey, here is this visitor, here is a visitor context, tell me what to do. And then we'll extract visitor information from there. We'll figure out where they are in the flow, what do they need to do. It's a multi-step flow. We'll kind of say, we need payment from them, or we need them to confirm their payment, and so on. And then we basically return the equivalent of a view model. As part of that, we do flow control, we do pre-sign-up session management, and we orchestrate from a bunch of services. So think of us being the broker, kind of. We'll talk to payments, we'll talk to account, we'll talk to subscriber, we'll get all the information and package it all together and serve a response. So now, sticking to the movie theme, once upon a time, long ago, we were the only service that was actually a middle tier service that was considered to be in PCI scope. And if this slide looks familiar, it's because I copied it from Purna's deck. We believe in reuse a lot, so copying is allowed. The reason we were in PCI scope is because clients, browsers, devices would talk directly to our tier. And since during sign-up flow we collect credit card information, we had to be in PCI scope. So for various reasons, we actually wanted to move out. Of course, security is a big deal, right? The fewer apps have to deal with payment directly, the better it is. And payments and billing have to do it, so let them handle it all. But there are other reasons. So there are restrictions for apps that are in PCI scope, right? There is authentication required. Not everyone has access, and we were kind of getting constrained in our rate of innovation because of those limitations. So the other thing is that the tooling for our non-PCI stacks is generally much more ahead of the PCI stack. That's totally okay, because 90% of Netflix apps are not in PCI scope. So even from a tooling point of view, the support for non-PCI deployments is much better. So we wanted to take advantage of that. And the third reason is that PCI sensitive information or handling that is really a small subset of our overall kind of business objective from a sign-up point of view. And so having to be in PCI scope just for a subset of the function was kind of onerous. So we made the decision to move out, and we work with security team, we work with payments team, we work with all the client teams to kind of make that happen. And the way we did it is basically we transitioned our service to go behind our edge tier. And as part of that, all clients would only communicate to us via edge. But then it required us to make changes in the entire stack so that we don't handle credit card information in the clear. So that's where we figured out a good architecture for that and went ahead and kind of planned it and started implementing it. But this is kind of a high-level architecture of how the whole system works. Essentially, it boils down to clients encrypting the credit card information and putting it into a secure blob. And they would encrypt it by downloading a public key from a public key distribution system, which was a PCI compliant CDN in this case. And so when they send it to us, we don't open it at all. We don't have any visibility into it. It's a pass-through. It goes down to payments, and then payments can actually decrypt it and send it down to a payment processor, get the response, and send it back to us. So that way we have kind of no visibility into what is actually inside that blob. So we came up with this architecture, and then we knew it would be a big project, so we kind of planned it. We knew it's a change in the client, so it's going to take a long time. Different client teams have their own kind of push schedule. And for clients, the other kind of restriction is even if you make a change in a client, by the time it gets out there to all the devices, it can kind of take a long time. So we knew that this was going to be a big project, but still, it took far longer than we thought. It took far more resources than we thought. Surprises is a pleasant word. I was going to use some other 4-letter word starting with S, but I thought that'll be too much. But we actually had many surprises along the way, and that's the main message from my talk is even after doing a lot of planning, for any complex system, when we are changing the way requests are being processed. There are many unknowns that you only know when you've actually gone through the whole process. So why did it take so long? I mean, we think we are good at planning. We think we know the systems well. So what were all the surprises? And they fall into a few big buckets. But before I go into that, just spend a minute on, how did we know that things were working or not? So we have good historical data on sign-up rates, on conversion rates, on how many people hit the payment page, how many people give credit card information, what kind of errors do they get, how many failures do we see on an average basis by country, by region, by different flow, etc. And that was our benchmark. Is if we are not close to that, then there's a problem, and we have to kind of go in and figure out and see what's going wrong. So these are the kind of big buckets. There are, of course, client-side changes which we were aware of and which we kind of planned for. But what we didn't expect is introducing JavaScript as a new dependency in the client for sign-up would actually cause some amount of churn. So prior to this project, one could sign up for Netflix on a browser without having JavaScript enabled. And as part of this flow, now we require JavaScript to be there. So we saw issues with old browsers on old computers not performing well. Some browsers didn't support it in a standard way. So we had to kind of go through every possible use case and figure out that, is this acceptable? Is this not? Should we worry about it? We were using a third-party encryption library, which by itself, there was no problem with the library as such, but when it came time to debug issues, time to figure out what's going on, it required someone to become familiar with that code and understand it and be able to instrument it, add logging and so on. And then retry logic. So surprisingly, this was a fairly serious effort. So retry logic was implemented differently on different clients. So TV clients did it a certain way, browser clients did it a different way. And we had a lot of debate on what's the kind of best mechanism. Should we retry once? Should we retry twice? What's the time between retries? And these are retries not necessarily from client to our service, but from the client to the CDN. So there are going to be some failures. There are going to be some timeouts. So just figuring out the right combination was a lot of trial and error and experimentation. And then system tuning. So we did change the stack. At the end of the day, there are additional dependencies. We have a dependency on a CDN. We have a dependency on a crypto library. We have new kind of flows that we have introduced, which were different from the prior flow. And making sure that these new dependencies were kind of properly accounted for, again, was a lot of trial and error and experimentation. So what should the TTL be for the key being stored in the CDN? What are the timeout values from the client to our tier? What should the timeout be from us to payments? Now payments is doing more stuff. So doing that and figuring out what are reasonable values, how should they change? We only know when you've kind of done it and then you see how the system is behaving. Error handling. So before doing this kind of project, our tier had access to some credit card details, so we could do some error checks. We could do kind of date validity checks, or is there a CVV or not kind of checks. And some of them migrated to the client, but some of them actually migrated down to payments. And so we had to make sure that whatever error messages we got back from payments actually were translated correctly. So the user impact is, there should not be any user impact. Logging, I mean, surprisingly, logging itself was a big deal. So we log a bunch of events as customers go to the flow, right? So that we have a good conversion funnel. That's a key data point that's looked at by product management, by consumer sciences, by payments analytics. So as we changed the flow, we also changed where events were being logged. And that ended up changing the way the conversion funnel looks. So, which is fine, but it was kind of unexpected. So we ended up having to shift where we log events and also shift how we look at them. So the key thing here is there was a difference, and that had to be explained. And last but definitely not the least, and I think this is where we probably spent a lot of time, is a differential impact of fraud. So Purna talked about the fact that there are card runners out there who are using stolen credit cards. So we knew that was happening. We knew there were people who had scripted against our sign-up flow and were constantly running different credit cards just to kind of validate them. But we did not know the extent to which that was happening. Once we actually rolled out this the secure MOF flow, we saw a difference in metrics, and we actually had to look through all our events and see how the customer population aged to actually figure out that the new flow caused problems for the fraudsters. It was an unexpected kind of side effect. They had scripted against our old flow and they had not caught up to the new one. So that itself took a long time. So it's okay that we saw a hit to our metrics, but it was actually good. And that took some time to kind of figure out. So all of these things, I mean, some of these we figured out in parallel, some of these we did sequentially. But at the end of the day, we had a postmortem, and we kind of were thinking that in our initial estimation, if we had known some of these things, it would have been much better. So I'm hoping that if you are ever considering such a change, you keep these things in mind. So before I move on to the last slide, I do want to say there's a big spoiler there for the movie. So if you haven't seen it, you may want to close your eyes. I won't talk about it. So any questions?
I'm just curious as to the time. So you showed your schedule where plan was this and actual was 5x.
Right.
If you could give some understanding.
So think of the 5x as a kind of a resource estimate, right? From a timeline point of view, it was probably double of what we had kind of guesstimated, but we just had to put a lot more resources into it. We had to bring in a lot of other teams. So, like for example, we had to bring in the website UI team just because we had to explain all the JavaScript kind of dependencies. So from a resourcing point of view, it took 5x. From an actual calendar point of view, it was close to 2x. Yes.
What fraction of your customer base did you eliminate by putting these new requirements on clients for the JavaScript library?
So the question is what percentage of our target customer base cannot now sign up because we require JavaScript. So I don't know if I can share exact numbers, but it's not a lot. And actually, given the time we spent from the time we started to the time we ended, it was even less. But at the end of the day, it was not material enough that there is a hit, but the advantages of having a more secure stack kind of outweigh that. Yes.
As you roll out into different regions, are there other requirements beyond PCI, like ISO 27000, that you need to look into?
It's not to my knowledge, but maybe Purna, you know about that. Do we have any other requirements?
So I think Germany and again, like billing and payments would know I would.
So we, for some payment methods, so let me repeat your question. The question is that as we go outside of US, are there other standards that we have to kind of meet? So not to my knowledge, for things like direct debit, in some countries we do SHUFA validation, but we want to do that. It's not a mandate.
PCI is standard across everywhere, right? It's not necessarily per country. The only we would have requirements in terms of like data hygiene and other aspects of like how do you hold customer data, how do you manage that. But in terms of like credit card information, method of payment, I think PCI is pretty standard across.
Even as you roll out gift cards too, as stored value?
Yeah, so even on stored value, there are legal requirements that we have, but there's no like standards that we're like have to be certified for. Yes, there are legal. Any other? Yeah.
Yeah, why JavaScript was such an hard problem? Like, was it because you have like clients that are like totally different from browsers and like don't come with JavaScript, or like when did you do this? Because like JavaScript has been like pretty much ubiquitous for like the past 15 years, right?
Yeah, so JavaScript itself, I wouldn't call it a problem. It's just that we didn't expect there to be the number of browsers that were not supporting JavaScript as we expected them to, like old versions of IE6 or something like that. And there are people who are still using them. So, so it was a conscious decision then that, okay, we are going to impact some of our users. And but then we expect those kind of old browsers to go away with time, and we'll take a little bit of it if it comes to that.
Yeah, just so we know, like when did you guys started this migration for like JavaScript to be a problem?
When did we start this migration? This is 2015, so sometime in 2013.
13?
Yeah.
One last question. Any other?
You payment methods like Apple Pay, would they simplify your job because you're integrating this with clients?
So the question is, new payment methods such as Apple Pay, would we consider integrating them, and would they simplify our job? So I think that's a business decision. Definitely from a fraud point of view, I would say they probably will. But it's a business decision whether from a revenue point of view, are they still better than credit cards or not? Did I answer your question? Okay.
All right, thank you. So big round of applause for everybody.